Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for attending our press conference with elected officials to protect America on offshore wind build-out, helping environmental justice through training, jobs, and health outcomes. We're so excited to have you today. As you know, Elected Officials to Protect America is a national network of state and local elected officials committed to solving the climate emergency and ensuring environmental justice and protecting our land, water, and air. Our core principles are public stewardship, that elected officials are publicly entrusted to be stewards of our communities, our democracy, and our future. It's our responsibility to step up as public leaders to protect the general welfare. And courageous leadership, that when problems like environmental injustice or the climate emergency come along, that it's up to our public servants to provide leadership, and courageously so to provide solutions to those problems. And then lastly, collective power, that by joining together, we have the power to help create tipping points on these issues and can lead no matter the challenges that come our way by working together across jurisdictional boundaries, levels of office, that we can come together and collectively solve these problems. So we're so excited to have you today and some of our amazing speakers to talk with us about the environmental justice aspects and benefits and opportunities with offshore wind today. So just as setting the stage, as you know, the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report says that we must act, and we must act to phase out our reliance swiftly on fossil fuels and develop clean energy solutions like offshore wind. We need to make that transition now. And as our economy is transitioning to a clean economy, transitioning to electric heating and electric transportation, the requirement for that clean power is going to grow. And that's where offshore wind farms are going to play an absolutely essential role in providing some of that baseload and that baseload power, particularly President Biden's the bipartisan infrastructure law, which has $7.5 billion in EV electric vehicle charging stations, and Inflation Reduction Act's advanced batteries and tax credits and a multitude of other provisions mean that to reach President Biden's goal of 500,000 charging stations, we're going to need to electrify, and there's going to be an increased demand for clean, stable baseload power. And that's where offshore wind can play a really critical role in providing that, and also protecting public health and ensuring environmental justice in many ways. So just a couple of quick facts. The state's goal, as you know, is the largest for offshore wind on the eastern seaboard, 11 gigawatts by 2040. It's a huge goal. And developers bid more than $4 billion to lease those areas off of the New Jersey coast and New York as well. And just the Atlantic seaboard alone could produce more than 4 times of New Jersey's current energy demand just with offshore wind alone. So there's a huge opportunity for offshore wind for New Jersey. So we're going to kick off our press conference by going first to Atlantic County Commissioner Caren Fitzpatrick. She is on the front lines of the wind issue and a very outspoken leader on offshore wind, and we'll pass it over to Commissioner Fitzpatrick.
Thanks, Dominic. This is a great opportunity to get some facts out to the public and try to educate people regarding the misinformation that's been put out in order to try and stop the wind farm project. As you said, the Atlantic coast is going to have wind farms, whether or not New Jersey takes part. We are going to have them. But what can happen and what should happen, what Governor Murphy has proposed to happen, is that New Jersey, primarily southern New Jersey, will be a leader in the manufacturing and installation and maintenance of the wind turbines in the wind farm off of the coast of southern New Jersey. Let's start talking. The first thing, one of the most important things we call New Jersey jobs and economic development, also known as jobs, union jobs for manufacturing, installation, and the maintenance, all union jobs. A study in 2022 said that the state can expect an additional almost 315,000 jobs, net jobs, in the next 10 years based on the current clean energy policies and investments. We have an opportunity in Southern New Jersey to become a hub, a nationwide hub to service the entire East Coast. We are situated perfectly. Our manufacturing area over in Salem County in the southwestern part of the state is perfectly situated to create and build the turbines, the monopiles and the bases. And, you know, they can just ship them down the Delaware River out to the shallow, wide continental shelf that is there, that is perfectly situated for installing the wind farms. There is no other place on the East Coast that has such a perfect geographical situation for that. And they in Salem County haven't had industry in a good 50 years. This is huge for them. It's life-changing for Salem County and Salem City and that whole region. We can't think of this as a Salem County issue, an Atlantic County issue, a Cape May County issue. This is a regional issue. And in stating those borders, those artificial lines that surround us is not a positive way to think of this. This is when one part of our region wins, we all win. And so something that people talk about is the impact on tourism. You know, Atlantic City is a tourist destination. Most of our shore is in New Jersey, our tourist destinations. But the turbines have been known in places where they already exist to create artificial reefs that increase fishing. The people are concerned that there's going to be an impact to their view. Not every day. It's going to be minimal, and it's only going to be on extremely clear days, which don't happen in the summertime around here. That's winter weather, and the view 15 miles out is going to be minute. We can talk about why are people opposing the wind farm when we all thought that this was such a no-brainer, that this was the answer we've been waiting for, especially here in Southern New Jersey, where we are the poorest part of the state. We need this industry. So the oil companies are behind the opposition. In 2022, they made $200 billion in profit. And just last weekend, this past Memorial Day weekend, they were complaining that they may lose $1.6 billion in profit over a 3-day weekend because of the cost of fuel. That tells us a lot. Additionally, the nonprofit groups, SAFE, LBI, American Coalition for Ocean Protection, are linked to the Caesar Rodney Institute, which has direct connection to Koch Industries. So our opponents always say, do your research, follow the money. Follow the money. It's coming from big oil to stop these projects. And finally, environmental justice, you know, redlining, which has been illegal for 50 years, created the places where refineries and terminals and factories were put. And this impacts populations of minority people, so that health outcomes for them are much worse than people who live in other areas. Thousands of kids age 5 and under die due to respiratory infections linked to air pollution from big oil, and that's every year. And finally, Ocean Wind, the one that we're talking about right now, Ocean Wind 1, is projected to reduce carbon emissions by $2.2 million annually, which is the equivalent of 400,000 cars being taken off the road every year. And if I just have one more minute, Dominic, can I have one more minute? Okay, there's some myths out there that just make my blood pressure go. What about the birds? Going to kill all the birds? No, the wind farms are going to be 15 miles out. Studies have been done. Birds fly 7 miles out. Not going to impact them. What about the lights? They're going to be lit up all the time. It's industrialization of the ocean. No, they're not going to be lit up all the time. They are so advanced. We are taking advantage of 30 years worth of trial and error and advancement, that the blades on the turbines will not be lit 24/7. They will be equipped with sonar to detect aircraft. And when aircraft are detected, then they will light up. Oil leaks. The latest and greatest technology is what we're looking at, direct drive motors, no pulleys and oil and all that stuff, and recyclable blades. That has been an issue, but there is technology now to break down the blades and have them become recycled and turned into other carbon items that are needed for technology. So that's why this is so important to our region. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity for us. And if it is halted, Southern New Jersey won't get something like this again. And the climate, the world needs this, but we can benefit so well from the industry being located here in Southern New Jersey. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Fitzpatrick, for your very inspiring and forceful words as well. And that's something that as elected officials, as public servants, we're very concerned about misinformation and disinformation and where that is coming from. I think you've laid out the benefits incredibly well, particularly for Atlantic City and Atlantic County. That's one of the least economically developed areas of the state, and just how important offshore wind is for frontline communities that are being impacted by stronger storms, and how important it is to stand up to disinformation and intentional misleading information to try to stop these. What you pointed out is inevitable, and the world is transitioning to clean energy, and New Jersey has an opportunity to be a national leader. So really appreciate your comments. We'll next turn to Burlington County Commissioner Balvir Singh. Commissioner Singh was first elected to the school board and now to county commissioner in 2017 as the first Asian American elected to countywide office in the county, and also the first Sikh American to be elected to countywide position in New Jersey. I'll pass it to Commissioner Singh.
Thanks, Dominic. Good morning, everyone. I'm proud to stand with my fellow elected officials and Caren, my colleague from the Atlantic County board. We have met a few times before. So I'm really honored to join you and all the other stakeholders for this particular moment. Supporting clean energy solutions and the goal of New Jersey to achieving 100% renewable energy sources by 2035. In Burlington County, we are fully aligned with that vision. While we do not have a shoreline, however, as the Commissioner Fitzpatrick mentioned, economic growth in one part of the state has positive impact for the whole state. In Burlington County, our residents suffer from polluting fossil fuel power trucks, continues to endanger many of the people's health. When all light-duty cars on the road are electric vehicles, we'll need about 30% more electric energy feeding our grid. While EV trucks that need for clean power will go up, offshore wind is consistent day and night. It is key to our clean energy future to power our EVs and homes. It is key to lift up environmental justice, communities with the training and union jobs, while improving health outcomes. Offshore wind power and other renewable energy sources will drive the transition of electrification of transportation as the internal combustion engines did in the early 20th century. For us, our county, Burlington County, is the largest in terms of the land mass, spanning 820 square miles, from Delaware River all the way to Atlantic coast. So you can imagine the amount of energy, the gasoline that is burned up as our residents commute from one place to the other. We are home to the largest section of the pinelands in the state, along with thousands of acres of farmland. All of this is at risk from climate change, and our residents have already felt the impacts of extreme storms, floods, and wildfires. To avert this crisis, we must continue to move forward with reducing our reliance on dirty fossil fuels and transition to renewable alternative energy sources. Burlington County is committed to helping reach those clean energy goals. And we are actually investigating our use of county-owned properties for solar power generation, since we're not right next to the ocean. The bottom line is this: clean energy is needed to protect our residents from the worst impacts of climate change. We must slow or reverse dependence on fossil fuels and must continue to move forward with our transition to alternative sources such as solar power and wind farms, including the offshore wind infrastructure, and grow our green industries. As a county, we stand united behind the governor's offshore wind development plan that creates thousands of good-paying union jobs, in addition to making New Jersey a leader in clean energy. We believe that doing so will make our communities more resilient, create thousands of jobs, and generate billions in economic benefits for our state and the surrounding region as a whole. Thanks, Dominic.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Singh. Really appreciate your comments. And I think you squarely said it when you said offshore wind is not just for the coast. It's the benefits aren't confined to the coast. It's the entire state, whether it's the storm surge benefits of the reduced wind from storms to the reduced coastal erosion and thousands of jobs, as you said, the economic benefits and the resiliency really are something that benefit the entire state. So really appreciate your leadership on this issue as well. Wonderful. And we will now turn to our last speaker, which is Shayna Steingard from the National Wildlife Federation, who's an expert on issues related to offshore wind and has been an outspoken advocate on offshore wind as well. We'll now hand it over to Shayna. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Dominic. Good morning, and thank you to EOPA for having me and inviting me to participate today. I'm Shayna Steingard, as Dominic mentioned, and I'm a wildlife policy specialist for offshore wind energy at the National Wildlife Federation. We're in the midst of both a climate crisis and a biodiversity crisis. And NWF's offshore wind team works in this critical space to ensure that we address the pressing threats of climate impacts by responsibly transitioning from dangerous fossil fuels to renewable energy, particularly offshore wind. Responsible development of offshore wind first avoids, minimizes, mitigates, and monitors adverse impacts on wildlife and habitats. It minimizes negative impacts on other ocean uses. It includes robust consultation with Native American tribes and communities. It meaningfully engages state and local governments and stakeholders from the outset. It includes comprehensive efforts to avoid impacts to underserved communities. And finally, it uses the best available scientific and technological data to ensure science-based, stakeholder-informed decision-making. Our team works together with other environmental NGOs, industry, government, and other stakeholders to ensure that we meet the ambitious and necessary goals of the Biden-Harris administration and the laudable and precedent-setting goals of the Murphy administration to deploy offshore wind in appropriate locations and with the proper guardrails to protect wildlife and habitats. In particular, my job is to review and respond to the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management and developer plans for offshore wind projects across the United States, including in New Jersey, with a focus on addressing environmental and wildlife impacts to all taxa. Thank you so much. I hope that helps with framing of my position, my expertise. I appreciate you having me again and look forward to questions.
So much, Shayna. So some anonymous questions that have been messaged to me. I'll pass those on to the panelists. First of all, I want to thank you and appreciate your expertise in talking about the broader benefits of offshore wind and why it's an environmental and climate benefit for everyone. And for all of the reasons that have been covered today thus far, from environmental justice, the economic benefits, statewide benefits. That's exactly why more than 129 elected officials across the state have called for responsible offshore wind development to ensure that the benefits of this reach all the communities across the state, and the state can lead the nation in these health benefits, the environmental justice, and economic benefits. So a couple of a few questions rolling in here. So one is, can you please say more particularly, Commissioner Fitzpatrick, on the links that you see with offshore wind and the links to the opposition, and what you think is motivating that, and how it can be counteracted?
Sure. Well, the opposition to offshore wind is clearly motivated by profit and power. Big oil knew in the 50s and 60s what burning fossil fuel was going to do, and they were very accurate in their predictions. But just like big tobacco, they held their information secret and continued to harm the earth and the people who live here. And now they take advantage of people who may not be as informed as they normally would be, or if you didn't pay attention when this was originally being discussed, maybe 5 or 8 years ago, when Ørsted first started coming around doing small grassroots meetings, then you're probably part of the population that feels that this is rushed and that it's being forced on people. It's not. This has been going on for some time, and now that it's here, these organizations are gathering people together and telling them that all the money is going to go to Denmark, that the climate change won't be impacted by renewable energy, that we're going to be harming animals and birds. And none of those things are true. And you have to dig a little deeper and have an open mind and listen to the information that's being put out there by experts who are not politicians, not elected officials, but scientists. We need to believe the science that tells us that these things are happening. Oceans are warming, storms are getting stronger. And the way to combat that is to stop burning fossil fuel.
Karen, would the other panelists like to comment on that?
Dominic, I would just add, in our county, we experience flooding a lot more than we ever used to be. And as the climate change impact has for us turned out to be one of those 100-year floods are happening now every decade. Sometimes we have a couple of floods that have every few years that happen, and we have communities that have had to pretty much uproot themselves, either sell their lands through Blue Acres program in the state and move away from the creeks because of the continuous flooding year after year. So the impact is felt, and as Commissioner Fitzpatrick mentioned, the industry, fossil fuel industry, knew the impact that was going to be on people and their lives and health, and continue to ignore it. So I would just echo again that we're really looking forward to the New Jersey moving forward to clean energy sources in the near future.
Wonderful, thank you, Commissioner. Since we have members of the press on the line, I'd like to open it up as well to our reporters on the line to ask questions directly of the panelists as well. Okay, well, feel free to jump in at any point. In the meantime, we'll continue to get some anonymous questions, so we will tackle those first. One of the questions is, what do we know about the impacts of offshore wind on tourism, and are there any, given that it's important for a lot of areas on the coast of New Jersey?
As everybody knows, the Atlantic City and the tourism industry in Atlantic City are the economic driver for our county. the research that has been available to us where wind farms already exist shows that it really doesn't have an impact. The turbines are kind of an attraction. They're something unusual that people are interested in, and artificial reefs tend to form around the bases of the turbines, creating additional recreational fishing opportunities and even charter boat opportunities, although 15 miles is pretty far out there to go for a charter boat, at least for me. But recreational fishing has been increased, and when commercial fishermen were concerned about the layout of the wind farm, the changes were made in the spacing of the turbines, now spreading them about a mile apart to give the commercial boats opportunities to navigate through there. We haven't had any official negative reporting. There have been reports done by the industry themselves showing that from high buildings or high structures, you will be able to see the tops of the turbines. But from the beach and the boardwalk, that won't be a recurring and often occurrence. It won't be happening all the time.
Commissioner Shayna or Commissioner Singh, would you like to take a crack at that question as well?
Just briefly, this is not my area of expertise. However, I will just flag that the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management is required by law to conduct an environmental impact assessment. It's through the National Environmental Policy Act. They conduct an environmental impact statement that does look at the potential impacts on tourism and recreation. And the final version of that for Ocean Wind 1 was actually just published last week, I believe, or the week prior, and it is available to review. And I can drop the link in the chat, Dominic, if that would be helpful to the person who asked this question. Again, my focus is on the environmental impacts, mostly to wildlife and habitat and not to tourism. However, this hopefully will be a helpful resource. And I will drop that as soon as I find the chat button.
Wonderful. Thank you, Shayna. Great. Pausing to let our reporters jump in audio if you'd like, or on chat. Otherwise, we'll continue reading the anonymous questions coming in. Another is, why at this moment, it was mentioned by one of the panelists, why at this moment to go all in on offshore wind? What would be lost? What would be changed if we do not seize this moment or wait to pursue offshore wind development at this time in New Jersey?
Well, the time is now. The technology is available, and the bottom line is this is going to be happening on the East Coast from Maine to North Carolina. And the question is New Jersey going to be the leader, or is another state or region going to be the leader? It's happening, and we want to be the lead to be able to reap the benefit, jobs, economically, environmental justice wise. All of those things play into it. If you stop now, administrations change, leadership changes. We have, I think, 4 turbines about next to our utilities authority at the sewage plant, actually, in Atlantic City. And that was supposed to be a wind farm. And they're 25 years old. There are 4 of them. And so that's what happens when you halt. We cannot afford to halt.
If I can add to Commissioner Fitzpatrick's statement, I'll also note that at this time we are in, as I mentioned in my comments, critical biodiversity crisis. The decline in species is unprecedented. Our oceans are warming at pretty phenomenal rates, and the species that are dependent on our ocean ecosystems can't afford to continue with the status quo. In order to curb the most harmful impacts of climate change, it's critical now more than ever that we transition away from fossil fuels to renewable resources. Doing so is one of our best chances to protect wildlife as they grapple with the impacts of warming temperatures on their prey availability, their habitat reliability and resiliency. So waiting now and not achieving the ambitious goals of 30 by 30 or 11, I believe it's 11 gigawatts as the Murphy administration goal. Those are essential to help protect wildlife, and we can't wait longer to accomplish them.
Submitted question is oil interests opposing offshore wind. That given that some at least subsidiaries of the oil companies are actually investing in offshore wind as well.
Dominic, could you repeat the question? Unfortunately, your mic is cutting out.
Absolutely. The question was, why are oil interests opposing offshore wind, particularly when some subsidiaries of oil companies are actually offshore wind developers and are investing in offshore wind?
Well, I would say that it's because the infrastructure is there, the profits are there. This is their cash cow. They're diversifying to hedge their bets, but this is their main source of income, and it's entrenched in our society. So opposing any change is beneficial to the bottom line.
Thank you, Commissioner Fitzpatrick. Pausing for others. Another submitted question is, what are some of your suggestions, given the amount of disinformation on offshore wind in New Jersey? What are some approaches as elected officials are you recommending that the administration take and that the public sphere can take?
Well, situations like this, getting the message out, educating the public. We need to have a campaign that's just as loud and just as strong as the opposition's campaign. Unfortunately, they've got a 6-month jump on us, which is a long time in this, but our message is getting out now, and it will become louder. And when people stop and think and use the information available to them, they will see that this is the right thing to do. This is the way for us to go. You know, it's not too often that people protecting nature and people proposing industry are on the same side, but we are. And it's really a perfect situation to amplify the message through all different types of language and communication, from the unions to environmental justice people to climate change people, and finally the government and elected officials. We have a platform, we have a voice. It's our responsibility to use it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Shayna or Commissioner Singh, do you have a comment on that as well?
I would add that some of the feedback that we do hear has been misinformation that's been either targeted towards small businesses or to other businesses that are tourism dependent industries along the shore. So for us to get this message across, we would have to also do targeting toward those stakeholders, industries that are tourism dependent, making sure that they understand the benefits and they understand that it does not have a negative impact on what you do and your economic vitality of that region. And then also a lot of the issues, at least from what I have seen, the propaganda has been around the fishing, the whales in the ocean, how it's harmful to them. So we'll just have to continue to educate people how, where there are existing wind turbines, how there has been no documented cases of this negative impact.
And I would also like to add that it's ironic that the loudest voices in opposition are from folks along the coast whose livelihoods depend on the level, the sea level. And with sea level rising, our main industry could be in jeopardy. So it really is beneficial to understand the truth about this whole process.
If I can add, the misinformation related to offshore wind and wildlife received a remarkable amount of traction. Anecdotally, I had relatives who had no idea exactly what I do for a living who actually came to me and said, "Oh, did you hear about what's happening with offshore wind and whales?" For the first time, kind of connecting the dots between what I do and the news. So it really reached a broad audience, and the sensationalism of that news was in particular really dangerous. And I think learning from those lessons, things that we can do in particular is have really good relationships like we're building right now with media, so that when a question about offshore wind and wildlife comes up again, or offshore wind and other issues, whether it be environmental justice issues, issues of labor, the media has identifiable resources they can turn to fact check the information that's coming out. There's a broad group of environmental specialists, tax experts, labor experts who dig in deep on these issues, and it's 100% of their job to pick apart every aspect of the offshore wind plan, the infrastructure, from siting all the way through decommissioning, and to understand the nuances and then offer suggestions based on science for best practices to avoid, minimize, mitigate, and monitor impacts. Unfortunately, because of the sensationalized stories, they really ultimately were a red herring and distracted from the real concrete efforts that we can make that would protect wildlife from anticipated impacts, the ways that developers, BOEM, can implement measures to ensure that the infrastructure is built in a responsible way, are being lost because of the focus on irrelevant misinformation about impacts. So I do think, again, reaching out to experts and experts reaching out to the press when these things happen is the first step in ensuring we don't have a runaway misinformation campaign again.
And since we brought up the whale situation, we should really talk about the actual facts of the case. This past January was the warmest January in New Jersey history, and the bunker fish that the whales feed from did not leave the shore because it was warm. So whales kept traveling in shipping lanes, which are busier because of labor issues on the West Coast. So the New York, New Jersey ports are busier than ever. So adolescent male whales don't dive deep for their food. They stay shallow. They stay close to the top of the water where the ships are. So the way to save the whales and save the dolphins is to stop the ocean from getting any warmer so that they can retrieve their normal habitat.
Another question submitted is, where, if anywhere, has offshore wind been proven to be effective, and how is that experience able to be best translated to New Jersey?
Well, I think the information we have is Rhode Island's Block Island is used as an example. Housing, one of the issues raised is, what about property values? Our property values are going to go down because of the windmills. That didn't happen. All you have to do is check Zillow.com and you can see property values in that area rose just as they did in adjacent areas. We are 30 years behind this in as far as Europe is concerned. I think the largest wind farm is off of England, about 1,000 wind turbines. They don't have whale issues. They're powering a great deal of their country, and we are able to take technology that has been advanced because of those experiences. So we are really getting high tech quality technology that will only make it better for us to lead here on the East Coast of the U.S.
Shayna or Shabazz, would you like to take that?
I actually think Commissioner Fitzpatrick highlighted the most relevant examples, Block Island, as well as the examples in Europe. We learn a lot from our colleagues across the pond, and are able to take much of what they've learned and apply it here. Although, as Commissioner Fitzpatrick mentioned, there are different issues, different species that and habitat types that we're dealing with across the Atlantic compared to in Europe. There are still a lot of lessons to be learned there. We've also been working on developing and deploying offshore wind in the United States for the better part of a decade, maybe a little bit more. It has not been a super quick process, but there are quite a few lessons learned that we have gained over that period of time. And additionally, this is occurring across the US. We see offshore wind developing in the Pacific, the Atlantic, and the Gulf Coast. And the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management has essentially developed really robust processes for assessing offshore wind across all these regions. And fortunately, we have the opportunity to learn from one another and implement adaptive management to continually improve the process over time as we learn more from research and monitoring efforts during the life of these projects.
Another submitted question is, does New Jersey need to be in competition with neighboring states on offshore wind, and how can the state work together with other states such as New York and New England and Mid-Atlantic states to create a regional industry?
I think we are in cooperation with New York and Maryland, is also another manufacturing area. But from my point of view, our region has suffered neglect. We need this. We need this industry in southern New Jersey, and we will happily supply any state that wants to implement offshore wind with our New Jersey made equipment.
Another opportunity for collaboration within the region would be for the development of transmission infrastructure. There's an opportunity at these earlier planning stages to implement what we call backbone transmission, which essentially helps to reduce the number of connections. It reduces the amount of habitat disturbance and environmental impacts by consolidating the transmission infrastructure so that it's more of a shared resource among projects. That's something that has to be holistically planned from the earliest stages. And it's a really great opportunity for the region around New Jersey to work together as states are implementing offshore wind for their own renewable energy goals, and also to meet the national goals set by the Biden administration.
Thank you, Shayna. Another question coming in is Governor Murphy's support for offshore wind has been a key driver on the industry over the last several years, but his term will be wrapping up. How will offshore wind continue to advance after he leaves office?
Well, hopefully the project will have enough benefit that the next governor, whoever that may be, will see the benefit and continue with Governor Murphy's long-term plan for offshore wind off of New Jersey, and investment in infrastructure and training centers and manufacturing plants that are needed to push the project forward. I think that anyone who is going to be governor is going to see those benefits.
Wonderful. Thank you, Commissioner. And we'll have time for just a couple more questions here. Another question is, who will be receiving the job benefits that were stated on offshore wind from the industry? Is this primarily benefiting workers with engineers or college degrees? And will there be opportunities for workers without college degrees?
Oh, I'm going to take that one. So just in the last couple of weeks, there have been two announcements, one from Rowan University and one here in Atlantic City, about the maintenance technician programs that are opening. Our community college built an entirely new facility to train technicians here in Atlantic City. And these technician jobs, which started about $65,000 or $70,000 a year, are for Atlantic City residents first. And they do not require a college degree, high school or GED. They're going to be, they've already started the open enrollment process. I believe classes are going to start here in Atlantic City, and then the students are going to be taken to the Midwest to work on turbines that are land-based. And then when they come back here, they will be fully trained. So yes, that is a huge part of the project, is having employment and education available for the people who are underserved here in Atlantic County.
Thank you, Commissioner Fitzpatrick. Commissioner Singh, would you like to jump in on that question as well? And a related question, which is, how will workforce development for offshore wind benefit environmental justice communities in actuality?
So we know from construction to maintenance, it's going to bring thousands of jobs. You need skilled labor in the beginning. You need skilled labor to maintain the infrastructure. We will have, I think someone already mentioned earlier, supposed to be almost a third of the state's homes will be powered when all the project is done through. 3.2 million homes, I believe the last time I read the estimate. You can imagine the amount of economic, the churn that happens with that bigger project. So I would agree that it's not going to limit it to professionals, college educated, working families, to all the way to engineers, this particular focus on the growth is going to be jobs all around. I don't have specific numbers as to how many will go where. And we know with these type of projects, you will have phases of jobs. Construction jobs are going to be the most, that's going to be the most needed right now. As you go through, you will have more of, and the colleges are already looking at how to train people now to run the machinery, how to maintain all of it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Commissioner Singh. Last comments from any of the panelists before we wrap up the press conference?
Just thank you so much for having this opportunity to get some facts out to the media so that we can move past the misinformation that's out there now. This is very important.
Commissioner Singh or Shayna? Yeah, again, thanks for bringing us together. This is always as a county, we are very much focused on preserving farmlands, preserving our quality of life, and we suffer from climate change in our communities, through flooding. And constantly, the fuel industries coming in and doing projects. So we're looking forward to having an offshore wind project happening, even though we don't share the shore there, but we're looking forward to having that benefit of the electricity coming through our county as being one of the closest. And having our county become more and more dependent on clean energy and less dependent on fossil fuels.
And Shayna, any words to close us out?
I would just encourage anyone on this call with follow-up questions or additional interest in the issues of wildlife and offshore wind to please reach out to me. I'm happy to answer additional questions, and in particular, any technical questions on wildlife and wind related issues, and can be available to discuss further if needed. But I'll echo Commissioners Fitzpatrick and Singh by just saying that offshore wind is absolutely critical at this moment. And New Jersey's leadership has been incredibly important across the United States to drive the industry forward. It is of the utmost importance that we develop offshore wind at this time to protect our imperiled wildlife from the worst impacts of climate change. And I personally and professionally appreciate the leadership that New Jersey has shown in pushing this industry forward.